Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from Mission-Picture-94. AITA for telling my mom to shut the f up since she's a liar and her opinion doesn't matter. My dad died when I, 18M, was 6. My parents had separated at the time, and mom was already dating her husband at that point. They decided to get married and give me a family unit after dad losing dad. Then within a few months, they were sitting me down to say they wanted to change my last name to their last name. Mom said it was important so that her husband could do his part to take care of me without issues concerning last names. I told her I wanted to keep my last name, and her husband wasn't my dad, and I didn't want to lose more of dad. I even cried about how important it was to me. She and her husband promised me repeatedly that they would pay for me to change my name back as soon as I was 17, and it was only to make life easier while I was younger. And people would make life more difficult for her husband to do certain things with me. I always regretted it, but believed for a long time they'd follow through. But about a year ago, when I mentioned it to my mom, she told me there was no rush, and I told her I wanted the name changed before graduation so I could have it on my diploma. There was a lot of back and forth, and her husband decided to add his own "what's the big deal anyway" comments occasionally. He'd also say his name had been my name longer than Dad's name had been at that point, and I said I didn't care, and I wanted my actual name back. That was my actual dad's name too. Eventually, my mom admitted she wasn't going to pay for me to change it back, and she believed I should keep her husband's name because he'd raised me for so long and had done so much. I said no. She told me it wasn't my choice, and I told her she would not stop me once I turned 18. I also told her that she was never going to have a good relationship with me again after lying to me and letting me down. She called me overdramatic, but I spent the rest of my time living with them cold and somewhat hostile, and I shut them out as much as I could. Mom kept, and still keeps, trying. I moved out of their house and in with my cousin, and I filed the day after my 18th birthday to change my name back. My court date is coming up very soon, and my mom knows about it because of extended family. She has tried to forbid me from changing my last name back, and she even lied and said her husband adopted me too, so I couldn't. But I confirmed that didn't happen. Eventually, she told me I was disrespecting them as my parents. I told her then to shut the f up, because she's a liar, and I don't care what she has to say about this, because her opinion does not matter here. My mom started crying, and I told her good. I told her that she lost me over this and it was her own damn fault. I told her I would never have said yes to the change had I known. And I told her to suck it up because she was not in charge of me anymore. Some extended family are backing my mom because of how I spoke to her. And mom told me I had no reason to speak to her like I did. AITA? OP is not an AH for standing up for something that is deeply meaningful to him. Instead, OP's mom and stepdad are AHs for breaking their promise. Another point is that I don't understand why they asked him to take his stepdad's last name. Regardless, OP and her husband are AHs, and I would rate them each 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. I will rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Worldly-P-5367. AITA for not responding when someone doesn't use my actual name. My 16M name is Nico, and it's not short for anything. On my birth certificate, it says Nico middle name last name. This is something a few people can't understand, and some people call me Nicholas. Even teachers who see me on the class list as Nico and not Nicholas. I'm a foster kid. I've been in the system since I was 2. My mom is the only bio family I know, but she's not able to take care of me. I see her twice a year through court-ordered visits, but nobody in her family and I don't have anything to do with my paternal side. I've been with my current foster family for 3 years, and I'm really happy with my foster parents and foster siblings. My foster parents actually want to help the kids they foster, and their kids are cool with their parents fostering and don't bully me or others for stealing their families. So I hope I get to stay until I age out of the system. My only problem is some of their extended family are snobs and they don't like calling me Nico. So they call me Nicholas even after being corrected a million times. My foster parents have explained that my name is actually Nico, not Nicholas. But the reply is always, but Nico is short for Nicholas. A couple of the extended family have encouraged me to change my name because Nicholas sounds much more professional for an adult male, which I will be soon. I was like, no thanks. My foster parents told me I should ignore whenever someone calls me Nicholas now, unless they're new and just assume. But I can ignore their family members who do it. So that's what I did. I've ignored them a handful of times now, and it bothers them so much. Yesterday it happened twice, because one kept trying to call Nicholas over and I just didn't go. The other asked Nicholas to pass the potatoes at dinner, and I kept eating and didn't pass anything. I was then called out for ignoring them, and my foster parents said nobody knew who they were talking to because there was no Nicholas at the table. One of my foster sisters said she assumed it was her Nicole, and they got confused, and that's why she passed it instead. I was told I should be more open to the wisdom others offer with name suggestions, and stop being rude by ignoring people, even though my foster parents backed me up again. It made me feel away because this really is my best foster experience, and I don't want to piss off people in my foster family. So AITA? OP is not an AH for demanding to be called by his real name. It is disrespectful on the part of his relatives to insist on calling OP Nicholas, especially when he doesn't like to be called by this name. OP's demands are 100% justified. OP's relatives who don't call him by his real name are AHs, and I would rate them 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is in the right, so I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from smooth_instruction11. AITA for asking my sister to replace my jelly beans after her son ate them. So, I, 25M, recently invited my family over for dinner at my new condo. I'm really proud of this place. It took years of saving, hard work, and sacrifice to get here. It's small, but it's mine, and I wanted to celebrate with a nice family dinner. I decided to make homemade spaghetti carbonara. I spent hours on it, crisped pancetta, freshly grated parmesan, whisked with eggs and pasta water for a perfect silky sauce. Carbonara is all about timing and texture, so I was in the kitchen paying close attention to every step. I added garlic bread, salad, and even made a cheesecake for dessert. It was a big effort, and I wanted the evening to feel special. Now, I keep a big jar of jelly beans on my coffee table as a treat. I love picking out a few here and there, and I always save the cream soda ones for last. They're my favorite. The jar has lasted a long time, and it's something I enjoy after a long day. My sister Laura, 35F, brought her 7-year-old son, who's honestly a bit of a handful. He's not used to hearing no and thinks every space is his to do what he wants. My sister has never set limits with him, and growing up, our parents spoiled her too. While I was busy in the kitchen, my nephew found the jelly bean jar. I didn't notice at first because I was trying to get the carbonara just right. After dinner, I went to grab a handful of jelly beans and realized that almost all the cream soda ones were gone. My nephew had picked them out, leaving a mess of crumbs and broken bits. I pulled Laura aside and mentioned it, asking if she'd noticed. She just shrugged and said, "Oh, he only likes the cream soda ones, so he picked those out, no big deal." I tried to be polite, but I told her that those were my favorites and asked if she could replace them, or at least get me some more of the cream soda flavor. She got annoyed and snapped, "He's just a kid. You're seriously this worked up over some jelly beans?" I told her it wasn't about the jelly beans, but that it would have been nice if she'd kept an eye on him or taught him to ask. Laura rolled her eyes and said, "Then don't leave temptations out if you don't want kids touching them." I asked her one more time to either replace the jar or just the cream soda ones, but she refused, calling me petty and saying I was blowing things out of proportion. My parents jumped in to back her up, telling me to drop it and that I should know better than to have temptations out around kids. But it's not just about the money, it's about respect and boundaries. I put a lot into that dinner, and her response was to let her son treat my place like his personal candy store. Now my family thinks I'm overreacting, but to me, this is about respecting boundaries. AITA for asking my sister to replace the cream soda jelly beans her son ate? Edit. I'll accept my verdict, since apparently it is normal these days to allow a child to root through a jar of jelly beans like a hog looking for truffles. What I won't accept, what I won't tolerate, is the insults about my competency as a home chef. Let me walk you through it so you understand why real carbonara takes time and why cutting corners would be a disgrace. First, I went to this authentic Italian market with shelves stacked high with imported goods, where the scent of cured meats fills the air. They carry real pancetta, flown in weekly, and I spent ages with the owner, Domenico, who handpicked the perfect wedge of Parmigiano Reggiano for me. A rich, nutty block that was almost too beautiful to grate. Next, I stopped at this tiny family-owned shop that specializes in fresh farm eggs and produce. Carla, the owner, gets these eggs from a nearby farm, and each one is an intense, deep golden color, perfect for a creamy, rich sauce. Finally, I swung by a salumeria for semolina flour. It sounds dramatic, but that's the lengths I go for traditional pasta. The place feels like a rustic, old-world bakery, with walls lined in wooden shelves and burlap sacks stacked high. Their semolina flour has a texture and richness that just doesn't compare. Ideal for handmade pasta that holds up with the perfect al dente bite. Back home, I crafted the pasta from scratch. Flour piled on the counter, eggs nestled into a well, kneading it with care until the dough was soft and elastic. A process that took a solid 15 minutes of arm work. Then, I let the dough rest before rolling it into long ribbons, each one dusted lightly with flour, like fresh snow. Finally, I crisped the pancetta, grated the cheese by hand, and whisked the eggs to the perfect consistency. The sauce had to be watched like a hawk, just enough heat to turn it creamy without scrambling, with careful additions of pasta water to reach that glossy, silken texture. So yes, it took hours, and I'm not ashamed to say that. OP is not an AH for asking her sister to replace the jelly beans that her son ate without OP's permission. OP is not an AH for her demand. Instead, OP's sister is an AH for enabling her son's messy behavior. It is not just about jelly beans, it is about OP's sister's irresponsible behavior. So, OP's sister is in the wrong, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the next story for mom's crazy partner. AITA for walking to my dad's house instead of spending the day with my mom's female partner. When I, 15M, was 13, my mother, a woman, cheated on my dad with one of her female friends from college she reconnected with. My parents divorced, and my mom married her partner. I'm an only child, and I live with my mom during the week. We're quite close. Her partner makes a lot of money. So much money that my mom thinks it doesn't make sense for her to work, and she's a stay-at-home mom. My relationship with my mom's partner is tense. At first, I didn't mind her. Since my mom doesn't work, her partner provides for her. As long as she provided for my mom and made her happy, I didn't care. My mom provides for me with child support money from my dad. Issues started quickly arising when my mom's partner started intruding on my life. She tried to look through my laptop but couldn't crack my password and demanded I open it for her. I refused. There was a massive argument, and my mom took my side, which caused tension between my mom and her partner. Next, she started judging me for my eating habits and weight. She started making comments about how I'm looking chubbier than usual and should stop eating so much fast food. I literally eat what my mom cooks at home. She also demands, since it's her house, I always keep my room clean and organized. I have no issue with this. She is right. What bugs me is that she will come into my room at like 6 a.m. and will yell at me while I'm asleep to start cleaning. All this BS results in a lot of daily arguments between us. I've started going to my dad's after school instead. This causes my mom to freak out and beg me to go home to her. I hate doing that, but I love my mom and do it for her. A few days ago, my mom sat me down with her partner and asked both of us if we could figure out a way to get along. A couple hours of discussion, and there was an agreement to try to be more respectful. Despite this, a lot of the same behavior keeps going on. And today, on the birthday of my mom's partner, my mom asked if I was going to celebrate with them. I thought about it and said no. My mom told me I don't have a choice. Since her partner provides for her, we both owe her basic decency and respect. She told me to get ready and dress nicely, since we were going out to eat. I had this moment. So when my mom went to shower, I decided to leave the house and walk to my dad's place. My mom freaks the out and calls me. I don't pick up, so she calls my dad and he tells her where I am. There is a huge argument between the two, and at the end of it, my dad congratulated me on standing up to my mom and her partner, despite being such a jerk to them. AITA? OP is certainly not an AH for standing up to protect his boundaries. He has every right to be respected, and his decision to walk to his dad's is completely justified. As for scores, I would rate OP's mom and her partner 4 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now move on to the next story from TopSureBet, 9466. Would I be an AH if I ban my son's girlfriend from my house? My 52F son, 22M, has started bringing his girlfriend over a little over a month ago. The first time he brought her over, I took it quite formally and cooked up a feast. But it soon became obvious it's becoming a daily thing, and not just a one-time formal thing. The first meeting she came quite a bit late and the food was cold by the time she came. No pardons or anything, and when we were done, everyone helped to pack up. And we thought she would kind of get the notion, but since it was her first time here, we didn't say anything. As for desserts, I like to do this thing example for cupcake. I will prepare the icing and everyone would gather and decorate their dessert, but she made it quite clear from the get-go she wasn't interested in it and stuff. So for basically the last month she's almost here daily, and she would request for specific dishes with no thanks and stuff. My other son, 17M, has also verbally called him out on her, not contributing anything gently, but she said something around the lines of no ring, no wife duties. I don't see this as a wife duty. I would do this for my friends' hangout, and everyone in my house put a hand in. My daughters, my husband, and my sons. So today when my son told me that she requested a specific meat pie for dinner, I am quite done. However, I don't want to affect my relationship with my son over this. Especially since he really likes her a lot, but I'm really considering banning her from our dinners. Edit. The reason I have such a big problem with this is because my other children has brought their mates back. My eldest son and his girlfriend is living in my house actually, but none of them have a problem like this. It was almost natural of them to contribute. Also, I don't have a problem with not wanting to decorate, but it's the idea of her not joining in on family. Like movie night and everything, she would just stay in the room alone. Even my son was in the living room. Edit 2. Yes, it was verbally communicated to her that she's expected to help out after maybe a few weeks, but she replied with the no ring, no wife duties ideology. And no, my son isn't able to get his own place. It's expensive and you need to be married to get a house. He can't just move out. OP is not an AH for banning her son's rude girlfriend from her home. OP has been hosting her son's girlfriend regularly, but her dismissive behavior is not justifiable. OP made a good decision to ban her. The girlfriend, not OP, is the AH in this situation, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is not in the wrong, so I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Agile Abbreviations 11. AITA, for telling my mum I won't be giving my son her last name. Hi Reddit. I'm a 21F who's expecting my first child with my partner of almost 8 years, 20M. Our son is due in less than 2 months. For this story to make sense, it requires some backstory. My father isn't in the picture, so my immediate family is me, my mother, and my twin. About 3 years ago, my maternal grandmother died. I didn't have a relationship with her, and neither did my mum, due to them always fighting. My grandma was quite wealthy, and when she passed away, she left me and my twin $500,000 total in a trust that we couldn't access until we were 25. She left my mother nothing. My mother got a lawyer and got money released early from that trust with the condition that me and my twin gave her half of our inheritance each. If we hadn't agreed to give her anything, she would have gotten nothing. Our mum then convinced us to put all the money into a trust of her own for our family exclusively for education and housing, saying it would build stability for future generations. I used this money to get a house that me and my partner currently live in. Since my mum found out I was pregnant, she's been very pushy that we use her last name, which is currently my last name. It's a traditional Scottish name with a capital letter in the middle and a lot of use of the letters M and N. I don't like this last name. It's hard to pronounce from just reading. I also fully intend to take my partner's last name in the future. 3 months ago, I told her we wouldn't be using her last name and would be using just my partner's last name. This set her off, calling me petty and ungrateful. I apologized for upsetting her and asked if we could have a conversation about it so I could understand why it upset her. I expressed that I love her and I don't want her to be upset. She refused, saying it was my child and I could do what I wanted. I assumed she had come to terms with it and moved on. Fast forward to last week. I got a text from my mum saying the following. By the way, I've made changes to the trust. Her last name needs to be your child's surname if you want him to benefit from the trust. I haven't worked this hard for the future to support a partner's last name. That's just the way it is. My last name or bust. I'd rather take the lot and spend it. This upset me. I asked her to give me some time and space to think about what she's done. She then went off at me about how her hard work wouldn't be wasted, even though she herself said it would be set up for future generations like my kids. She wouldn't even have any money to blackmail me with if I hadn't agreed to give her half of my inheritance after her own mother screwed her over. I have gone no contact. But I'm starting to wonder if I'm the asshole for not just using her name to keep her happy in order to make sure my son gets access to that money. I don't want him to miss out just because his grandmother is an entitled piece of work. So, Reddit, AITA? OP is not an AH for standing up for her son. Her mom's demand is manipulative, disrespectful, and self-serving. OP has every right to choose the last name of her choice for her son. OP's mom is being unreasonable, and she is an AH here. I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from OK_author 4471. AITA. For what I said to my fiancé's dad's wife. My fiancé, 27M, and I, 26F, are engaged, and right now we're still planning our wedding. I'm walking down the aisle with my two brothers, since our parents are both sadly passed, and my fiancé wants to have his older sisters walk him, since he doesn't see why we both can't walk, and he wanted to include them as much as possible. He also wants to dance with them during our reception. His dad's wife discovered this and wanted to be the one walking him down the aisle and dancing with him. But my fiancé, and both of his sisters actually, have not got the best relationship with this woman. While their relationship with their dad is pretty okay. Not very close, but not super distant either. But his wife is another story. My fiancé first met her when he was 10, and his sisters were 13 and 15. Their mom died a year earlier, which their dad's decision to remarry that fast did add some strain to their relationship, because they don't feel like he considered them at all. When my fiancé met her, he thought she was okay, but by the time the wedding was approaching, he realized she wanted to be more of a mother to him. She wanted the girls as her bridesmaids and my fiancé, her son, to walk her down the aisle. None of them wanted to do this. After the wedding, when she wanted my fiancé to allow her to step into the role of mother for him, it grew more tense and unfriendly. My fiancé felt like she forced the issue too much. She felt like he should have been more accepting of a second mother in his life. The tension grew when she realized she was truly not even seen as second best by him, but was not seen as anything beyond his dad's wife. His dad's wife already requested he let her walk him and dance. He clearly said no. There was a fight over her feeling like his mother and him, laying down the fact he has never considered her to be anything of a mother to him. When she couldn't get through to him, she tried to go through me, using the fact I was adopted and my parents adopted me to do this. She told me I know all about blood not meaning parent, which is true, I do. My fiancé doesn't feel this way because his mom was biologically related to him, but because she was there to him and she was the one who raised him, which is how I feel about my parents, and it's a whole thing. I told her it was my fiancé's decision, and I would not force him to do anything he doesn't want to. She told me for the future of my future family, I must and I should as a woman who has no genetic family. This got under my skin, and I told her that she is not winning any points with me by talking to me like that, and that I would never betray my fiancé for her. I also told her she needed to back off and accept that she does not have a place in their hearts, and forcing herself onto them will not help. She was furious with me and called me a bad daughter-in-law. Then she texted me about it afterward and told me I owe her an apology. AITA? OP is not an AH for standing up for her fiancé. Her decision to not compel her fiancé to do what he doesn't like is reasonable. Her fiancé's entitled stepmom is being an AH here, and I would give her a 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from adventurous_bag_3723. AITA for asking my boyfriend to quit his sport. I, 23F, have been with my boyfriend, 28M, for about 2 years. He has played rugby for the entirety of our relationship and started about a year before we met. Rugby is the third person in our relationship, so I asked him to stop playing. Was I wrong? Every Saturday is rugby day, where he wakes up, watches a game, plays a game with his team, and then watches another game after, usually followed up by highlight reels on YouTube until he goes to bed. He has a 2-hour practice every Tuesday and Thursday. He coaches a high school team. He assistant coaches a college team. After every game, practice, scrimmage, etc. He comes home with some sort of injury, or is just in general debilitated by pain, covered in bruises and cuts. He has been to the hospital for a separated shoulder, a split open eyebrow, a split open lip that went all of the way through his muscle and fat, and the most recent was he got a bunch of turf beads in his eyelid and was almost blinded, not exaggerating, by it. He will take off work for games and practices. He will cancel dates for games and practices. He will miss important events for games and practices. My family home caught on fire. We had a fundraiser. He tried to skip it for a game. The game got cancelled, so that's why he showed up. We were out to my birthday dinner, and he asked if we could rush it so that he could make his practice after. We can't go out and do anything on a rugby day. We can't have sex on a rugby day. He can't function on a rugby day. And his excuse is, it's tough on rugby days. Well, his Saturday is a rugby day has turned into every day is a rugby day. He gets stressed out financially because where we live is extremely expensive. But he has money for new cleats, new studs for his cleats when they break off, tape for his joints for games, team memorabilia. Basically, he has money for rugby, like an addict has money for his fix. I want to say I'm glad he has something he enjoys. I'm glad he coaches, and that his students look up to him, and that it makes him feel good about himself. We've both met some incredible people through the rugby community. But the phone calls at 1 a.m. that he's in the hospital due to an injury, getting yelled at because he's broke, having to cater to him whenever he plays because he's sore, consoling him when he's bawling his eyes out because he lost a starting position and having to eat, sleep and breathe rugby because he does, it was too much. He freaked when I asked him to leave, told me I don't appreciate the things he cares about, said I should be thankful he has rugby, or else he would be dead, that he has nothing else. I feel horrible. AITA? Update. Are people not seeing where I asked him to stop playing? He can coach, mentor, watch, etc. That is okay. It's the overwhelming amount of injuries, money spent, and then screaming at me that I'm the reason he's broke, that made me ask him to stop playing. OP is not an AH here, and her asking her boyfriend to stop playing rugby is a reasonable request given the injuries, financial strain, and above all, neglect of their relationship. Love for a sport is justifiable, but going mad for it is not, and sacrificing your relationship for it is beyond comprehension. So, I think OP's boyfriend is being an AH here, and I would rate him 1 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is not in the wrong, so I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Sad-Cell 2569. AITA for offending my in-laws by deciding my daughters won't have a quinceanera, and the reasons. Context: my husband, M35, and I, F34, have 2 daughters. The oldest, Lexi, 14, is not my husband's biological child, but he has been nothing short of a father to her. Our second daughter, Rosie, husband's bio, is just a baby. Last weekend, we got together with hubby's family at his parents' house. MIL started talking about how we need to prepare for Lexi's quinceanera next year. Hub's family has joked multiple times about Lexi getting to have a quince now that she's an honorary Mexican through my husband. My husband's family is from Mexico. I am not of Latino origin. They grew up in the Catholic faith. I did not. While I love that hubby's family considers Lexi their own and includes her in other Mexican traditions, quinceaneras are the one exception. I have told my husband before I don't agree with what it historically represents, and we aren't Catholic. My husband has also said he understands this. I tell my MIL that Lexi won't be having a quince and has told me she just wants to go do something with her friends. My MIL snapped at my husband in Spanish and left the room. I was then bombarded with both of my SILs, one their husbands, and my MIL from the other room, demanding to know why Lexi couldn't have a quince. My husband told them to stand down, but for the next 20 minutes they kept making passive-aggressive comments like, "Poor Lexi won't have a quince like her little sister will." I finally said in a stern but calm tone, "I understand it's a tradition, but I do not agree with the original meaning of quinces, in that now a 15-year-old is a woman and ready for marriage. I know it's modernized now and means they're just entering womanhood, but I still don't agree with the symbolism. They're kids. Besides, husband and I don't practice Catholic faith. Lexi is not having a quince, and I don't want Rosie to have one either." From all directions, shouts of, "What? Rosie has to have one! And Rosie is Mexican, you can decide for Lexi but not for Rosie," came from all my in-laws. All last week, my husband was getting texts about how much I offended them, and that a quince, more so for Rosie as his bio kid, is a rite of passage and marks a milestone into womanhood. I told my husband that if Rosie really wants one in the future, I would be open to hearing her reasonings, but I won't encourage or force her to. My husband hates confrontation and told me this morning that I'm the jerk for not just giving in, because disagreeing with how they feel about quinces is offensive to them. OP is not the AH. While the quinceanera is an important tradition for her husband's family, OP has valid concerns about its historical meaning and their lack of Catholic faith. She's respectful in expressing her stance and is open to hearing her daughter's future wishes. Her husband, however, should support her decision rather than caving to family pressure. No scores this time. Let's now jump to the next story from flaky-number-3617. AITA for not inviting my best friend's boyfriend to a 6-year clear of cancer meal. I, 19M, suffered from cancer while I was only 12. I had a lot of people there for me, but the one who was there for me the most was my best friend, 19F. She was by my side the whole time. Whenever I had to go to hospital for chemotherapy treatment, she was always there messaging me, making sure I was okay. When I arrived back in school, I had joined a drama club, which was after school, and lasted about an hour and a half. There was one guy in this club that I did not get along with at all. I'm gay and have knew for a while, and after a month of being back at school, I had told my closest friends and they were all supportive. But like everything in high school, word got round to other students, and TBH, I didn't mind all too much, but this guy in the club found out and was extremely homophobic towards me, telling me I should leave the school because no one would want to talk to me anymore, and started bringing up hurtful stuff about my cancer. I had not long beat such as, "It should have taken your life," and "It's a shame you beat it." Fast forwarding to now, we are celebrating 6 years of me being clear of it. We have a meal every year to celebrate. It usually consists of me, my family, my boyfriend, 22M, who I've been with for almost 2 years, and my closest friends. My best friend started dating this guy 5 months, and I found out a few weeks into their relationship it was the same guy who said all that hurtful stuff to me 6 years ago. I spoke to her about it and agreed to give him another chance as she seemed genuinely happy with him and had insisted he had changed. Me and him still don't get along, but I don't interfere with their relationship as she is the happiest she has been for a while. She then asked a few days ago if he could come to the meal that I was holding for my 6 years clear. I was pretty hesitant and told her that as much as I'm happy for her being with someone she likes, he was awful to me in high school and I can't forgive him for what he was like. I also told her that he still doesn't like me, as he has made that obvious about a month ago, when he said something to another close friend of mine about me and my boyfriend. She is now calling me childish and started saying I should just forget about it. She also said, if he doesn't come, she isn't going to either. I don't know what to do, and I don't know whether to forget everything and let him join in the meal, or deny her request of him joining, and deal with the consequences of her not joining either. So AITA for not forgetting what he had done, and denying my friend's request of him joining. OP is not an AH for setting her boundaries. It is pathetic to make hurtful comment about a cancer patient. It is disrespectful and completely unjustifiable. OP's friend's boyfriend is an AH, a big AH for making such negative comments. What OP did is completely justifiable. As for scores, I would rate her friend's boyfriend 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now move on to the next story from Electronic Zombie 1994. AITA for telling my husband his friend can't come to our house. My 38F husband, 45M, has a lifelong friend. This friend royally screwed us over financially. He tricked my husband into quitting his good-paying job, packing up our stuff, and moving with the promise that he could make money working for him. My husband did the work over a period of months and never got paid. His friend kept all of their earnings, while my husband quite literally did all of the work and even paid for some of the materials, plus used some of his own personal materials. Meanwhile, I had to work a fast food job to keep our bills paid. I'm not above that, but I have an extensive administrative background with high-paying jobs. But none of these jobs existed in this tiny town, so that's what I was stuck with. We eventually found out that this friend owed a lot of people money, employees, friends, family. He basically lives off other people's money and labor, including his own wife, whose paycheck gets direct deposited into his account, and she would complain to me that she doesn't even have gas money. When people started chasing my husband for money, since he was now the face of the business, asking where his friend was, including the IRS, it became embarrassing and we finally moved away. Husband and I reconciled amazingly. It was a tough time for me, and I was often blamed for the situation, and even gaslit by his friend who told me I was fat, ugly, greedy, and didn't understand how business worked. My husband only insisted on staying for so long because he wanted to live closer to his children from a previous marriage, who happened to live there. So I understood his point of view and forgive him for putting us through that. Anyways, 5 years passed after this, and we never heard from the friend. Husband and I rebuilt our life, and now run a successful business and also purchased a house. Guess I do know how business works after all, huh? I was over it, at least until this friend creeped back into his life recently. He said he was getting kicked out of his living space, made up some elaborate story, which I am positive is bullshit. And I think that really, he was just in search of some place to go. And maybe he thought he could get something out of my husband. My husband, thankfully, is not helping him there, but he wants to give him another chance to be friends. He wants to invite him to our house, have our children play together, and I'm left feeling like I have to relive this nightmare all over again. I want nothing to do with this person, and I absolutely cannot allow this person into my home or near my children. I don't even trust him not to physically steal things from our home. My husband is now blaming me for interfering with his friendship, since I won't let him at the house. I said, maybe you should blame your friend for his behavior, or get better friends. I didn't pick him, and he makes me uncomfortable. It's just too bad IMO. But here I am being accused of being the bad guy. Deja vu of what that put us through all those years ago. AITA for wanting nothing to do with this person, and making my husband's friendship difficult by not allowing him to come over. TLDR, husband's friend screwed us financially, disrespected me, and now my husband wants to invite him over after several years. AITA for not wanting the friend in our home. Edit. Just wanted to add, since a lot of people had concerns, my husband is in no way allowing this person to go into business with us or make any kind of business dealings. We've already discussed and both agreed on this. As for our finances, I have full access to all of it. My name is on everything, and my husband isn't savvy enough to siphon money in the way some of you are thinking. Not to mention, he simply wouldn't do that. He has a friend and made a dumb decision. He's not some monster who's going to steal money out of our bank account. Edit #2. Please stop telling me I need to blame my husband for what happened. I already do. Edit #3. Just wanted to mention, the friend has not, at this point, stepped foot on our property. Some of you seem to think he comes over or is staying here. He messaged my husband almost a year ago when he was getting kicked out of his place. He's living somewhere else now, and messages my husband just every few months or so. He messaged him the other day again, and that's why I decided to bring it up. OP is not an AH for standing up to protect her family's stability and peace from her husband's so-called friend, who betrayed them both emotionally and financially in the past, and ruined their reputation. OP's husband's desire to reconnect is unreasonable. As for scores, I would rate OP 0, and her husband's friend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story. From No-Platypus 1486. AITA for refusing to go on a family trip from which my partner was abruptly uninvited. For the last 8 or 9 months, I, 28F, and my partner, 30M of 3 years, have been under the impression that we were both invited on a 2-week trip to my family's country of origin that will happen this coming June. My mother, who traveled there with my youngest sibling, 16, in summer, 23, at the invitation of my siblings' friends' family, who are also from this country, pitched the idea of the trip to my siblings and me around January 2024, and said she also hoped her sister and brother-in-law, my aunt and uncle, and their children would want to come. When my mom first mentioned the trip to me, I asked if my partner could also come. She said yes, and since then she has talked about it to both of us, in front of him at least a few times. We have been saving up and recently found neighbors to watch our dog. About 4 or 5 months ago, my aunt and uncle also decided to come on the trip. My mom and aunt are very close, and my aunt and uncle have been extraordinarily generous with our family in the past, helping my mom, and by extension my siblings and me, through a long period of financial difficulty following my parents' divorce. 2 weeks ago, I received an email from my aunt about the trip, saying the invitation was not being extended to either my partner or my cousin's partner, who, as far as I know, had never planned on coming on the trip in the first place. They have only attended 2 family holidays in the near decade that my cousin has been dating them. My partner, on the other hand, is much more integrated into my family and comes to my younger siblings' recitals and graduations, our family dinners, etc. I was confused, because the way the email was written did not acknowledge that my partner had been invited on the trip from the get-go, months before my aunt and uncle decided to come. I wrote back expressing that my mom had originally made it seem my partner would be welcome, and that I thought it would be incredibly hurtful to my partner to revoke his invitation, and that it would feel like our family was rejecting him. I also mentioned that we were planning not only to pay for our own expenses, but to contribute to the overall family fund for the trip to help cover expenses for others as well. My aunt wrote back saying that now that she and my uncle are on the trip, it is a completely different trip, and the old trip no longer exists. She said that having my partner along would change the family dynamic, and that they want it to be just our family. I wrote back asserting that to me, my partner is family too. We've been together for 3 years, have lived together for 2, and own a house and 3 animals together. We are also planning to get married after he finishes school this spring. I said I wouldn't feel right about coming on the trip if he is no longer invited. The tenor of my aunt's emails became angrier, and she insisted that since he and I are not currently married, my partner doesn't count as part of our family. I offered that we could go to a courthouse and get married before June, if that would make them more comfortable and willing to have him along on the trip, and she wrote back that I was being ridiculous and impulsive, and that I needed to consider whether being with him was making me a better or worse person. She also told me that I need to stop putting my family second and think about their needs too. I emailed her back offering the compromise that if my partner came, he could give us some days to do activities and have meals together just as an immediate family and go off and explore on his own. She did not accept this compromise and still said the dynamic will be affected. All this time, there was also no word from my mom, either to me or to my partner. She finally emailed me this past weekend, saying that while she feels badly to my partner, I need to think about what my aunt and uncle want as well, since this trip back to our country of origin is so huge for them, and neither of them has been back in over 40 years. She then said that our family has done so much for my partner, and that he should show love and graciousness to them by telling me to go without him. For the record, my partner has told me to go without him because he thinks the way my aunt is treating me is abusive, and he doesn't want me to have to continue going through all this stress. For me, this is a hill I am willing to die on, because I feel that them putting me in this position is incredibly insulting to both my partner and to me. The additional context of all of this is that my mom has a history of acting out whenever I have had a serious relationship. The worst was in summer 2021, when she essentially kicked me out of her house because she was offended that I asked if we could reschedule a family game night so I could see my then boyfriend when he came through town. She said things like, "I hate your guts," and told me I was a harm to my brothers, and that it would be better for everyone if I left. She was then so angry when I did get an apartment of my own and move out that she barely spoke to me for months. Things have been better between us recently though. I am worried that I am the asshole here because I am being so inflexible about the fact that their plans changed and haven't been willing to accept the notion that this is a whole different trip now that my aunt and uncle are coming. I do get, at least intellectually, the desire for an immediate family-only trip back to our country of origin. But I just don't think you can invite someone and then disinvite them, especially someone's partner. My family seems to think that this is okay to do, given the importance of the trip to our immediate family, and the fact that my aunt and uncle have both worked incredibly hard and always been incredibly generous with my mom and siblings and me, helping us through a lot of financial difficulty. My aunt also told me not to tell my cousins what happened, which pissed me off because it made me think they were going to lie about why I wasn't coming on the trip. So I forwarded the whole email exchange to my cousins and my siblings. In the past, when my mom has gotten angry at me, she has presented an inaccurate picture of me to my siblings and aunt. Forwarding the email against my aunt's wishes might also make me the asshole, though. I have only heard sporadically from a couple of my siblings in response to some of my messages to them. And that's it. No one has reached out. TLDR. My family initially invited my partner of 3 years on a trip back to our country of origin. They have now suddenly uninvited him because of the way they think having him there will affect the family dynamic. We were going to not only pay our own way, but help cover overall expenses for the family as well. And my partner even offered to give the family time to ourselves on the trip. Family still won't budge, and since I am not going, are treating me as though I have done something terribly wrong. AITA. OP is not an AH for standing up for her partner. It is unfair on the part of OP's family to abruptly uninvite her long-term partner after initially inviting him. It is really humiliating and dismissive of their relationship, which also disregarded their months of planning and savings. Money should not be the problem here. The real issue is that OP's family doesn't consider OP's partner a part of the family. I would suggest that OP not compromise and instead refuse to attend the event. If your family doesn't respect your partner, it means they also don't respect you. The best option is to decline the trip. In terms of scores, OP's aunt is an AH and deserves at least a 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, while OP is not at fault. Let's now jump onto the next story from Ornery Bookkeeper 8115. AITA for refusing to go to confession so I can take communion in my brother's wedding. I, 31F, have 3 siblings, 40M, 38F, 27M, and we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married, and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother, Luke, is engaged to his GF of a year, Emma, 28F. She is nice, I guess, but we have never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something important is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke, and it has always been a sibling joke that I am truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume he is older than me, but nobody has had issues with it until Emma. The day I met her, she kind of scoffed when I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend. She has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She has been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I am just polite and civil, always include her when planning stuff, but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it, but we just shrugged it to different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided I could not be in the wedding party since I was not married in a church. Fine by me. Then she requested that immediate family submits their dress plannings so she could check it, fits the wedding dress code. Fine, whatever. You see where this is going, I hope? You'll see I have not gone to confession or have communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason, I am respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites I don't participate on. Well, this is not good enough for her, and she says I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no, and she has not taken it well. For the most part, I avoid her as I said before, but this time I wasn't going to say yes or risk an issue. I told her for taking communion, one needs to go to confession, and I didn't want to. She said all immediate family is doing it. And it will look bad if I don't, I told her. Sure, fine. Then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody, but won't do confession. She said if this was going to be my attitude, I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him, thanks, as gave him a thumbs up and went home. My family understand my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices, but I shouldn't have said what I said. I told them I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore, and I don't owe Emma explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it, and she is fine with me now. I got a text from my brother wanting to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made to take confession too. He said no, because it was only nuclear family members. I find it funny since all the others are clearly older than her, and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. AITA? Update. Things have moved, but I wouldn't call any of this a positive progress. I would like to clear something I kept seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go in the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise, but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issue with compromises. I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young, but not like a teen or a child, obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I have witnesses, her being very my way or the highway with younger people, so she has issues for sure. The confrontation from the last post was on Tuesday, and today we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship, as in, they are not as close with each other as they are with other siblings. My older brother, Robert, is very no-nonsense, and he has never been a fan of Emma, but he didn't think he should have to intervene. Because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships, all this is going to be relevant, I promise. We visit Grandma a lot since she lives by herself, and we truly enjoy her company. Today we were all there because she is over this drama already. After a lunch, that was more like snacking to be honest, she asked us all to clear the air. Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person. and that she was asking the bare minimum from me. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking communion, and Emma said that she was her elder, and for sure her reasons were more than a tantrum like it was in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all the siblings, and I was the only one that was being difficult with her tiny request. This is where everything crumbled for her. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed and he was already exhausted by this situation. He asked her why she had no issues with him not taking communion, and she looked like a kid that was caught. She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew why he and Grandma became lapsed. She shook her head and looked at Luke for help. Luke, on the other hand, was staring angrily at Robert and I, but said nothing. Robert explained to Emma he was the reason Grandma became lapsed. When Robert was a teen, he came out as gay, and was so worried about our grandparents' reaction since they were very active in the Catholic Church. Grandma felt awful about it, and even worse when she went and spoke about this with the then priest of her church. That priest was super old school, and told her that Robert was committing sins, he was going to hell, he needed to find his way. The whole 9 yards. Grandma didn't take that so well and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years, she started getting into the whole community again, but she decided she was done taking the sacraments. She respects parts of the church, but can't fully reconcile with it. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman, and he explained he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have ended with a man. He also commented they are not married in the church, but that didn't matter to her like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I also was very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman, so I still don't understand her obsession, but it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person, and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. More was said, nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again, but declined, going, Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh, and yes, Grandma spoke with the priest and he wants them to do extra premarital counseling or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he is old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent, and my grandma loved the Pope joke. Update 2. My brother has gone too far and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry, and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I want to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought I was just stubborn and creating drama. But now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called her to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened, and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help since he was her favorite grandchild, and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believed this, and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBTQ+ members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out by the way, doubted if she would do it for them. So, Grandma explained to Luke and then call every single one of her grandchildren to ask them how they felt and explain to each a part we didn't know. She said that when Robert came out and she spoke with the old priest, he hinted about knowing of places to set Robert straight. Grandma had heard horror stories from this place, and so had Robert, and they both spoke with my parents together about that not being an option at all. My parents never intended to send Robert there, and are very casual Catholics, but Grandma wanted to cover the bases just in case. I was told Grandma sounded like she had been crying on the phone, and after the first couple of calls, which went from oldest to youngest, the group chat started to blow. Robert is livid. Our LGBTQ+ cousins are livid. And say Luke lied. Even the cousins that were telling me to stop being a stubborn head are livid. By the time I was up for my call, I was already on the way to Grandma's. 2 of my cousins were already there, and the youngest one, Sarah, 16F, was ready to literally fight Luke. For a bit of levity, Sarah is about 35 centimeters smaller than Luke, and the image of her swinging at him made me laugh a bit. She asked if I was making fun of her, and I just explained the whole mental image of her trying to hit him, and she admitted it was kind of funny. What I didn't tell her is I would love to slap some sense into Luke. My grandma has been through so much in her life, and this is not what we want for her. She looks puffy-faced and kept asking everybody if they truly felt unloved by her, saying she would do everything for any of us, explaining how Robert was the oldest grandchild, but that didn't mean she loved the rest any less. She is a strong woman, but I think something inside her broke a little with the thought she hurt her grandchildren. It was a big one, and I was just so done with Luke. My parents have been passive towards the situation so far because I asked them to, but after they heard what happened, they told him they need time away from him. Robert is simply disgusted and decided to not speak with him anymore, which he communicated through the cousin group chat, with Luke's response being that this is why Emma's help on reigning all us would be so beneficial if we just let her. He also added how Robert never cared for him or anybody really, and he just tried to be the center of attention all the time. He cited his coming out, his announcement he was going to marry a woman, the birth of his child. It was ridiculous. He came out when Luke was a toddler, and for many years, only our parents and grandparents knew. He announced he was going to marry his now wife through a text, but didn't interfere or took from anybody. His child was born 4 months before Luke's graduation, and apparently that was a big issue for Luke that he never commented. Maybe I am biased, maybe I am selfish like Emma claims, but I call bullshit on his tantrum. Every single one of the cousins has been helped, babysat, tutored, gotten out of trouble, you name it, by Robert. He isn't perfect, but he isn't the conniving ass Luke is claiming. Maybe Luke has always felt inadequate, and we didn't notice. Maybe it was his last-ditch effort. Maybe Emma has manipulated him so far that he can't come back. It doesn't matter anymore. If he does marry Emma, I wish him the best. If he doesn't, I hope he goes to therapy. Regardless of what he decides, he burned so many bridges and hurt so many people. I don't see this resolving anytime soon. For now, I will focus on my grandma and making her feel better. I feel extremely guilty because it was Emma's situation with me that opened this can of worms. I know I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. Update 3. I want to start this by saying that Grandma is in better spirits now. I am overwhelmed by the amount of people supporting her and very grateful for it, even if it's online. I have talked about this on some chats and DMs, but please know the situation with Emma is not about her being parentified or her family being strict Catholics. It's just her being her. They were already going to get premarital counseling. An extra was added. Oh, all cousins also don't live in the same city or town. Some are a bit longer than others, but we keep in touch through the chat. The reason for the update is mainly to let people know Grandma is okay, her health is fine, and she had a blast with my cousin Sarah. I also want to update on what has happened with the cousins and the maternal side of our family. Some of our paternal cousins from Grandma's side have relented and feel a bit bad on excluding Luke from things, so the compromise was met on, he can be invited to everything, just don't force people to interact. These cousins are mainly on the older side and have soft spots for the youngsters. My youngest cousin, Sarah, said she was okay with it all, but she wanted them to keep him away from her since she can't stand him anymore. Our maternal side was a because of course we need one. Some of them were very upset, but others told me I should try to understand where he was coming from. My mom was the one that told them everything, and some told her she is at fault for making Robert the star of the family. This was so uncalled for, but brought some issues in my family, particularly when one of my maternal cousins asked me if I could behave enough if I am seated at the same table as Luke for his wedding. It makes us doubt ourselves, but really, this is a cousin that Robert has bailed from almost bankruptcy 2 times, and he's the problem? I haven't said much about my sister Lucy since she voiced nothing different before. She was always very close to Luke, and even had a great relationship with Emma before the debacle. She decided to be out of it because she was so disappointed. While she was never made to babysit or anything like that, she was always so into Luke since he was her baby brother. She loved him the most. And I know that because she literally told me when I was a kid. We have a good relationship now because her kids are my buddies, but it was rough for a while before that. She was upset about the whole thing. But when our maternal family, or at least a part, started excusing Luke, she lost it. She's a very calm person. The type you don't expect a bad word out of. But she lost it, and I think it was the last straw on the cold bucket for Luke. She sent a massive message about what has been happening, detailing every single thing and daring people to kind of come at her if they disagreed. She made sure to include every single nasty thing, every bad word, every eye roll. She sent it to so many people because she was tired of the half-information telephone game. She is upset at me because my refusals made this happen, and she said she knows she shouldn't, but she needs time to fix her feelings, so she is not speaking with me right now. My parents decided they were out of the wedding and told Luke he is on his own. There was never a monetary issue. They were willing to contribute. But both Luke and Emma are pretty well off, and was no need for that. Now to what maybe most people want to know, and the only conflict I am interested about anymore. My grandma is feeling better. Sarah being with her was very positive. It was lovely to see the eldest and youngest of our family so in tune, but then again, they have always been. She requested that Sarah invited Luke to her birthday party, December, and after a lot of back and forward, he is going to be invited. We will see if he comes or not. A small parenthesis, I showed my grandma the joke of the knife, sword, etc. She was so giddy. Thank you. I mentioned before that Robert would pick up Sarah if she needed. It is still true. What I might have not mentioned is that she, of course, gets a weird lecture from him, and an even weirder lecture on how he rates certain drugs. LOL. As I said, he is no saint, but he is not a either. Lastly, yes, he has photos even with my sister or me in the newborn wall. People love to take pics of him holding the new family members, and he collected them and put them together when he got his own house. OP is not an AH for setting her boundaries of her personal beliefs and boundaries. Here, Emma is an AH for being demanding, disregarding OP personal beliefs. OP's standing her ground is reasonable and justified. So, I would rate Emma 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale and OP 0. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.